love and I enjoy talking about real estate investment, and that is why we have this podcast, Real Estate Talk with Solomon Evarist. Today I'll be discussing land banking. Land banking, the real gold in real estate investment. You don't want to miss this one. This is Solomon Evarist, and you're welcome to the podcast, the Real Estate Talk with Solomon Evarist. The real gold in real estate investment. What is land banking all about? I know you've seen a couple of videos on land banking, but today's video is something that you'll find interesting, especially when you're new to the real estate investment game. Okay, now I want you to sit down and enjoy this conversation. Land banking has always been there. It's not as if it's anything new. We've always had land banking, back even in the Roman Empire, the Babylonian Empire, and so on. Land banking has been in existence. However, we could say that presently in Nigeria of today, okay, the age and time that we are now, we have seen an increase in the use of the word, an increase in the use of the system, an increase in the application of what land banking is. Now, what is this land banking all about? Now, land banking is typically about a system where investors and real estate enthusiasts like myself and you watching this video right now, buy land in undeveloped areas, remote locations, with the intention to sell for a good profit, right? So imagine a situation whereby you're buying land in a remote location, a distant location, a location that is not developed, a city area that is not developed, like I call it bush, okay? People go and they buy bush, believing that in the future, this bush will become a beautiful garden city, a beautiful investment hub, and then at that point, they sell and they make their money. Simple. That is land banking. Every other thing you can get from your dictionary, right? So, but I believe that this will help you understand the crop of today's conversation, land banking. Going to a bush area, an underdeveloped area, a new city area with potential, you buy land, a couple of plots, 1 or 2, 300 plus acres or hectares of land, with that faith, with that belief that in the nearest future it will amount to something. So let's look at things you need to understand or things you should know about land banking and how land banking can create wealth for you. Land banking, the real gold in real estate investment. Stay tuned. Why land banking? Yeah, there are different instruments, there are different systems or strategies to real estate investment, right? We have cash flow, family or multifamily apartments. We have different investment. I'm going to be talking about that in subsequent podcasts. But today it is about the realest of all real, right? Yes, as they say, the master of all master, the grandmaster of the whole deal. One of the interesting parts of real estate investment, the golden boy, okay? The new ways, the old cat that is a new cat today, Yeah. Now, land banking. Why land banking? When we talk about real estate investments, the first thing you should consider is the land itself. Every other thing dwell on this land, okay? So the land itself, which is earth, is the first point of call for every real estate existence. If you don't have the land, you don't have anything, right? Now, when you buy a land and you build on that land, real estate itself is encompassing of the land itself, what you have underneath and what you have on top of it. So if you have land and you have mineral resources underneath it, you have trees, you have cash crops, you have food crops, you have structures, you have water, you have access roads, whatever you have on it, all of that defines real estate. So, but the most important factor of that conversation, of that existence, is the land itself, the earth which you stand on, which you walk on, and all of that. So when we say a property is appreciating in value, okay, a huge significance of that explanation goes to the land itself. So you have a property in Banana Island that is worth 5 billion naira. Now, a good chunk of that amount is the value for the land. Now, what is the price of land in Banana Island, Lagos, Nigeria? At lowest or at medium range, you're looking at over ₦1 million per square meter. So if you're looking for a land in Banana Island, you probably will be paying ₦500 million for 500 square meter. Now this is like the least, okay? And most of the land size go for like 700, 800. Now some of the land also sell for 1.2 million per square meter, 1.4 million per square meter, and so on. So when you have a property valued at 5 billion naira, 200 million naira, a vast of that number, a big chunk of that number is considered to be the worth of the land. Now the structure, okay, only adds a bit of value, okay. Now even if it's a new house, yes, you can say, oh, because it's a new house, the property worth this amount. But over time, what really appreciates is the land, because the house itself can go out of fashion. No matter how functional it is, no matter how luxurious the house is, the house can go out of fashion and you're left with the land. So over time, the land itself stand the true taste of time in the value market. So when you go to old areas that are in the city center and they are put up for sale, okay, what people look at, what valuers look at is the location and what is the pricing for land in that location. We've seen people who go to Victoria Island, places like Victoria Island or state capitals, they buy old houses that are well positioned, okay, they demolish these houses and they rebuild new houses. So what it means is that the structure on the land can go tomorrow, the structure can be tampered with, but the land itself remain fixed. So the real value of a property, of a real estate property, goes to the land. So when we say why land banking, and what we're trying to say is that you need to deal on the real deal. You need to deal on the real deal. You need to bank on the real deal. Now we're about finance banking, money banking. So when we say land banking, it's another system of saying, you know what, I am putting my money on land assets, okay, saving my money there, hedging it from inflation or whatever economic downtime, in order for me to prosper from it, for me to profit from it in the nearest future, knowing and understanding that over time, land as a part of real estate will always appreciate based on demand. Now that has never failed, okay, from the time of Father Abraham, from the time of Adam and Eve. Land has always been an appreciating asset, unless that land is a wasteland, entirely wasteland where nothing can grow on it, where the air is polluted, but the land remains very valuable. So when we say land banking is the real gold in the real estate investment space, what we are saying is it is as real as any other thing. So when you buy this land, you're holding on to this land to sell in the future. You're doing yourself a lot of good. Now, if you're looking at the economic situation today, I'm learning to be an economist anyways, but from my understanding, when you look at financial instruments, there is no safe haven. We've seen, the downtime in the currency itself. We've seen how, stock market have been performing, or the downtime and all of that. We've seen all of these financial instruments failing in one point or the other because of the inflation, because of certain factors. But when you look at land in itself, the value of land keeps increasing. It is not stopping the appreciation of land, especially in areas where there is high demand. In fact, as I speak to you now, there are people who will never be able to buy land in certain areas. And the only opportunity they have now to create a world for themselves, to create an opportunity for themselves, is to bank on land in areas that are underdeveloped. Now you can ask yourself or ask me this question: must land banking be carried out in areas that are underdeveloped? No, you can do land banking in developed areas, right? You can also conduct land banking in emerging city areas as well as the remote locations. Now, when we stress on land banking, we are very much considering and focusing on land banking in areas that are underdeveloped. The reason for that is you cannot really bank, okay, to a significant proportion the kind of or the size of land that can create you mega opportunities, okay, in developed areas because of the cost. So if I'm saying as a young person, I want to create wealth for myself using land banking, and I earn less than let's say 15 million every year, 10 million every year, 5 million every year, and I want to go into land banking, you can't expect me to have a capacity to bank on land in areas where land sell for 200 million per plot. But as a growing person, in a growing age, with my growing income, I have the potential of, capitalizing on my annual income, let's say 10 million per annum or 20 million per annum. That can get me a good amount or size of land in city areas that are underdeveloped. So with 10 million naira, I could probably get 10 plus of land somewhere, and that land is still as equivalent to what you have in the areas selling for 200 million. But the difference is the demand and then the activities that have been built around there. The activities, the social lifestyle, the infrastructure, access to lifestyle, access to government, access to people, and all of that. So it makes a lot of sense when you put that money, when you put that investment in an area that is underdeveloped, where the price is lesser, okay, so it gives you a lot of economic benefits. So that way, anybody can play the game. But if you're looking at developed areas, developed city areas for land banking, then you're pushing that land banking process to just the 1% of the 1%, the wealthy class, the middle class, the large, the class with the big bulk or the big pockets. So, but land banking is not the idea. It's not an idea for just the wealthy. It is an idea for everyone that has the cash flow to do so. Okay, so you can do land banking in areas that are underdeveloped. It is the best recommended way of doing land banking. Now, let's take a typical example. We've seen and we're celebrating the richest black man, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, who is the chairman and the founder of the Dangote Groups, the same owners of the Dangote refinery that was just launched this year. Now, what did he do? How did he go about that kind of massive investment? Why didn't he do that in a place like Ikoyi or Victoria Island, Ikeja, and so on? Why did he have to go to a remote location? Now, if he wants to do the same thing in a developed area where you have city centers, access to market, and all of that, so it will be costing him so much to access the land. And then the possibility of seeing the land size, you can imagine that in comparison, the size of the refinery is almost 3 times, 4 times, or 5 times the size of Victoria Island. That is how big it is. So it means that it is very possible he cannot even find that size, okay, in any of the developed area. So he had to go to a remote area, a place that is underdeveloped, a place with potential, a place with plans, government plans, and all of that to situate his project. Now he had to bank on land in an underdeveloped area where the land had lesser value compared to developed city area. And what has happened in that area? Now, because of that single investment, because of that single massive economic move, the whole land area within Ibejuleki has, they've hit the roof. A place where you could get land for 500,000 as of 6 years ago, 4 years ago, even 3 years ago. You're talking about you're looking at over 10, 15, 20 million naira to buy a piece of land, a plot of land in that same location. So land banking is about taking your money and buying a piece of land or more in a place with potential. So I will be talking more about potential in the course of our conversation here in this podcast. So let's look at the next factor to consider while doing or planning to do land banking. So let's talk about where and how you can do land banking. Where can you do land banking and how can you do land banking as an investment, there are certain factors I need you to look out for. And wherever you find these factors playing out, please, you can consider land banking in that environment. Okay, so to do land banking, it has to be done in a place. It has to be done in a city area. Okay, a state. Now, Lagos is known to be the most talked about real estate destination, and that is because of the massive infrastructural development ongoing, and then the massive investment from the private sector. We've heard about the Dangote refinery. You've heard about the free trade zone. You've heard about the deep sea port, the new international Lekki airport. You've heard about Ekpe. You've heard about the Lekki Ekpe axis. You've heard about Eco Atlantic City. You've heard about so many things ongoing in Lagos. Now that has become an indices, okay, pointing investors to the city of Lagos. Now, if you find these same indices in any location, then it means that that location is also viable. So to conduct land banking, you have to look out for areas, city areas with the potential to grow, city areas with the potential to embrace progress, to embrace development, where government has plans, okay. Now, in most of the states or states capital, you'll find out that there's a plan for a trade zone, a free trade zone, an international trade fair, airports springing up. So if you want to carry out land banking, you need to consider areas with potential, areas with plans for government infrastructure. Oh, there's a rail line coming up, there's a deep sea port coming up around there, there's an airport coming up around there, there's a massive school project, there is a massive hospital, where you have projects, whether proposed or under construction. It is a wise decision to buy land or carry out land banking in that location. So if it's in your state of preference, it can be anywhere. So once you find these indices, it is advisable, to consider land banking in that or in those areas. Now, the good thing about underdeveloped land is that they sell for less the price you get for developed projects or developed land. So if you're looking at land banking, you have to look out for places with potential, underdeveloped. I'm going to repeat that, underdeveloped. Yes. So to create enough opportunity for yourself, for you to be able to maximize, your profit and your gains, it has to be an underdeveloped land where you can put value in it. And then when you find such a space, please don't buy one plot. Don't say you're doing land banking and you're buying one plot. Buy in bulk. Buy in bulk. You can buy an acre. Okay, now this is not me dictating for you. You can do 2 plots. You can do 1 plot. Fine and good. But if you want to really do land banking, it has to be in bulk. You have to consider an acre, which is about 6 plots, or 2 acres, 12 plots, 3 acres, 10 acres, 100 acres, 50 acres, 15 acres, as much as your capital, as much as your pocket can contain. Now consider what Dangote did. They bought in bulk, right? Now look at also what other persons who have created legacy in the Lagos real estate market. They were able to create, that opportunity for themselves by buying land in acres, and today they are reaping the fruit of those investments. Okay, you might have heard about the Eleganza Industrial City. Now the founder, Chief Razak, was one of the earliest investors, land investors that we can identify with, because of his massive investment that has turned into commercial hubs and usable areas of the city where people live, work, and then carry out activities. And these estates are worth billions of naira. So it can just be you, okay, in that area that you have discovered, in that city area that you've discovered, creating an opportunity for yourself in the next 10 to 15, 20, 30 years, and so on. So consider areas that have potential, areas with government infrastructural development, areas with proposed plans, right? Now for you, you may think that those plans will never come into fruition, but you see, you never can tell. Anything can happen. If they say there's going to be an airport somewhere, if they say there's going to be a deep sea port coming somewhere, if they say there's going to be a food bank, please consider that. Now take an example from Ekpe. Ekpe is known to be the new Lagos, okay, where you have plans, and then government have so much plans for the town that investors cannot resist, making investments in the city of Ekpe. There's a plan for a food bank. There's a plan for a film city. There's a plan for the airport. Okay. There's a plan for so many projects. Now, with all of these infrastructures, with all of these government plans, it has, thrown the attention in that space, and the whole city is becoming something else. Yes. So investors follow the money, investors follow development, investors follow areas with potential. And that is why you have lots of investors buying land, banking on land in Ekpe. The same thing happened in Ibejuleki when the news about the free trade zone came, okay, and then there was acquisition from Dangote for the refinery development. You had people raising into the area to secure land. There are people who went there, bought 30 plots, they bought 10 acres and so on, and now they are selling at a value of over 15, 20, 30 million per plot. Now, these are areas that you could get land for as low as 500,000. Now, the same thing is happening in Ekpe. The same thing is happening in Ijebu-Ode. People are looking out for this opportunity and they are making good use of the opportunity. Now, it's not just in Lagos. Now, have you traveled around Nigeria? Now, when you travel to certain areas, you discover for yourself that the real estate growth is not just in Lagos. There's real estate boom in Asaba, that is Delta State. There's real estate boom currently ongoing in Kano, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt. There's real estate boom in Anambra State, in Enugu State, in Imo. There's real estate boom in Abia State. There's real estate boom in Akwa Ibom. So all of these areas are picking up. Okay, all of these areas are beginning to pick up. In Ibadan, there's real estate boom there. In Abeokuta, a lot of things are happening there. Okay, these things are beginning to pick up. Why is that so? There is a lot of awareness now. Okay, the population is growing all over the country. The youth, the middle class is also growing despite all of the challenges. So there's an opportunity for people in the real estate space because there will be need for commercial development. There will be need for residential development. There will be need for banks and other institutions. There will be need for government to expand, the city development and bring infrastructure to better the life of the people. So when you find these indices for development, if you find these indices of potential for growth, you have found a good site for land banking. Okay, so like I've mentioned, apart from the location to consider, apart from the fact that you have to find underdeveloped city areas, it is important that if you're buying, you buy in bulk. Now, when you buy in bulk, when you do land banking and you buy in bulk, you're helping yourself. There are stories of people who bought land in places like Ibejuleki, in places like Abijo, Axis, and so on, and they are regretting. Okay, they are regretting that they bought few plots. Now, I myself, for one, I'm also regretting because I had opportunities to buy land in these areas, and today they are worth so much. I have this experience where I had an opportunity of buying a plot of land somewhere in Abijo for 1.450. I was dilly-dallying, and all of that. So most times, even for those of us who are in the industry too, there are times where you could have doubts, right? This was just about 2019, and guess what? Today, as I speak to you, that same land that I refused to buy or I was delaying about to get for 1.450 is currently going for 30 million naira. No cap. Okay, so that is a big regret for me. Big regret for me. So I've also seen investors who have preached this idea of land banking to, and they wasted time over it, and now they are regretting it. Okay, there was a conversation I had with a friend 2 years ago for a land banking project in Ekpe that was going for 1.8 million naira. As I speak to you now, if you had gotten 6 plots as of 2 years ago, that would have been little less than maybe 12 million naira. Currently, as I speak to you, that project is going for 7.8 million naira. So when I met this friend of mine a couple of days back, and we had the same conversation again, and he was asking for the same location, I told him it was 7 million, and he was shouting. So we've seen these things happen over time. Now, land banking has the potential to create wealth, and that is why people are considering land banking. Okay, so when we get to that part of the conversation, I will tell you how you can create wealth using land banking as a wealth creation instrument. So, but for this, I want you to understand that you can carry out land banking in anywhere, any part of the city, any part of the country, any part of the world. Once they have these indices for growth, once there's potential for development, once there's potential for for growth, for lifestyle and all of that. Okay, people will always want to grow. People will always want to have this urban experience. You've seen this experience around the altar. You've seen what the projects in Alta has been able to bring to that community. You've also heard about the Redeem Camp here in Nigeria. Go there and price for yourself what a piece of land go for. And why is that so? Because there was development. Okay, you had one massive movement, Christian movement in that area, and that woke, that activated the real estate spirit in that town. So the same thing is happening everywhere across the country. You just have to spot it. You just have to put your eyes down on the ground. You just have to work with the partners with the right connect and the right access to give you that good land for land banking. So let's look at the next thing to consider for land banking and how you can create wealth from land banking. Wealth creation opportunities from land banking. How can you create wealth? How can you, as an investor or as a beginner or as a real estate enthusiast, create wealth from land banking? Now, a couple of years ago, I had a friend, I and some friends of mine or business associates, were in the east, and then we went to a place just around where you have the new Maduka University, the Peace Mass Transit University, private university that was launched last week or so. We had this opportunity of buying some plots of land for about 400,000. Now this is about 2 years ago. Now currently, as I speak, that particular location is going for 1.5, 1.8 million naira. Now, when we did this transaction, it was land banking, and then today that is 3 times the value, right? Or 4 times the price or the value of what we got for 2 years ago. Okay. Now, so we cited the opportunity considering that there's a private university in the center of nowhere. Now, guess what? Having the university there attracted a police barracks in the same location, okay? And that also, activated the real estate spirit in that area. So investors were able to buy land in that area, as I'm sure of, got land for 400,000 2 years ago, but now the value of their property is at 1.5 to 1.8 million and growing. Now, this is for the land that is right inside, far away from the express road. So land banking has a way of helping you create wealth. Okay, the good thing about land banking is that you put in little. I've just mentioned, from my previous points, that you need to go to where underdeveloped areas where the price for the land or the asset is less, okay, where it is affordable, where you can buy more. Now, for land banking, it shouldn't be one plot. I always advise my investors or my clients and partners, buy bulk, buy multiple plots, and it should not look at city centers. Okay, city center investment is a different ball game. It's a different investment game. So when we say buy bush, like I always say, from bush to city, bush has a way of giving you potential, but then you have to buy wise. You have to buy a bush with potential. So I cited a story where there was a private university and people bought land around the private university. They bought for 400,000 naira. I bought for 400,000 naira, and now it is worth at over 1.5, 1.8 million, and so on. So that is how to do land banking. Now, with this, you can see that I don't have to be a millionaire to have started land banking. With less than 500,000, which is about 400,000, I was able to secure some plots of land. So this is the leverage that land banking can give you, wealth creation. Now, the thing about land banking is that it's not about now, it is about delayed gratification. Okay, so what that means is that you're buying this land with the intention to sell in the future, not the following year after purchase or 2 years later. You need to learn how to use patience, the game of patience for you to see the fruits of your investment. So the whole idea is to buy it with the intention to sell in the future to come, right? 10 years time, 15 years time, where it will worth a whole lot. We've seen a trending video where a lady bought land somewhere in a Lekki for little for about, I think, less than 5 million or so, and then as of last year the land was worth over 95 million naira 15 years after the purchase. So that's the idea. Now you may think, oh, 15 years is a long time. Guess what? We have just done 8 years under the last administration. Okay? So would you have thought that 8 years will come and go in such a short time? Now that is the same thing with land banking. When we say hold for 10 years, hold for 15 years, in your mind, you're not going to live longer. No, I tell you, you'll definitely live longer than that, and you'll see it. Now, if you don't, you have people, you have children, you have family members. So the idea of land banking is to prepare your future. I learned this popular saying from one of my teachers who said, live your life as if you die tomorrow, but study and plan as if you will live forever. Okay? So when investors create wealth, they think about tomorrow. When you're talking about building wealth, you're talking about growth, you're talking about positioning yourself for, for a better future. So because you want to have a comfortable future where you have access to finance, access to assets that will make you, assets that will reposition you, assets that can refinance you, assets that can give you security, it is important that you plan for the long term. To do land banking, you need to plan for the long term. So to create wealth, one of the opportunities to create wealth using land banking is to plan for future sales. It can be future sales, it can be future lease. Okay, now that's another conversation for another day. It can be future sales, it can be future lease. You can also consider what we call a business franchise. We've heard about the story of McDonald's and how they were able to sell real estate and not just donut, right? Now that principle still applies everywhere. Now, about I think 10 years ago, I was opportune to be in a forum or conversation where there were very wealthy people talking about investment, and then I was opportune to get this information that there were people who were buying land in strategic areas. Okay, as of 10 years ago, to sell to banks and other institutions in the future, right? So if that was 10 years ago, it means they probably have started, talks with banks or other institutions that will need those land. So what some people do is that they go to strategic locations, they buy this land, okay, then in plan to sell to institutions that will have probably branches all over, okay, and then for themselves. I also heard from that conversation how some of them plan to open up franchise, okay, and open up multi-branch businesses for themselves in transport, in oil and gas, and so on. So guess what? When you see people in their seat of wealth, you think, oh, it just happened. Okay, now that is a seed or proceed of proper planning. Now let's say you have plans to go into the petroleum industry or the domestic gas, or how is it called? Let's say you have plans to go into the LPG gas, liquefied petroleum gas business, or you have plans to have a mechanic workshop, an auto workshop in every part of the city or every strategic center of the city, or you want to have a business franchise all over Nigeria. Do you know you can start now to bank on the land? So let's say for every state of the country, you are buying one plot of land in an emerging city area, okay, with the plans that in 10 years time, that in 5 years time, when you'll be ready with the capital, you will be able to open a business franchise or multiple branch locations for your business. It could be logistics, it could be oil and gas, it could be a hotel business, it could be a restaurant, it could be a shopping mall. Now that is proper planning. So with land banking, you can plan for your business growth. You can plan for to supply your land or to sell your land to a business franchise. People will be able to buy every land that you have in every city or every state of the country because you have intentionally positioned yourself for that kind of opportunity. So some people don't just stumble on these opportunities, they plan for it. And with land banking, you can plan yourself. Then another way of creating wealth is residential and commercial development. So I've seen people who buy land in certain areas and they are not ready to build yet. The plan or the intention is to build in the future, right? So let's say you have plans to build a shopping mall in the future, and then you have done your calculations, and let's say, oh, you need nothing less than 2 acres or 5 acres of land to build a befitting shopping mall that will give you good cash flow. Do you know you can start now to buy that in strategic areas? So let's say you're buying 6 acres of land in every major city or every major capital, every major emerging city location in the country. Okay, now when you get to that point when you're ready, do you know you can also start building your commercial hub? If it's for residential multifamily units, you can now start building your your family units. So most of the conversations that I've had with developers who are into apartment development and so on is that one of the biggest costs in development is the land itself. So when people say, oh, a property is expensive, it is because of the land. Now, those who are making much profit margin in the development of multiple family apartment projects are those who are able to secure the land years before the project, right? So in comparison, they make more profit margin compared to their peers who come at that ready time, right, like right now, to buy land in the same location. So let's say if I have 6 plots of land in Aja or 6 plots of land in Chevron, okay, and I plan to build in the next 5 years. Now, in 5 years' time, when the plot of land will be going for over 500 million naira in the Chevron axis, okay, for new competitors, for new persons who will be having new entrants into that neighborhood, they'll be buying land at 500 million, while I will be using my land that is currently valued at about 150 million naira to do the same project. So my profit margin is definitely going to be higher compared to those who will be entering the market at 500 million naira per plot. So you can plan yourself in this order that in the future, the nearest future, you'll want to build residential apartments, across the city area, or you can start now to buy that land in preparation. Okay. Now with this kind of plan, it can happen in developed area, underdeveloped area, emerging area, and developing areas, right? Now, another way of creating wealth under land banking is consideration for processing loan facilities. So, a lot of businessmen and women who are big time into business over time find themselves in a situation where they need to refinance their business, where they need to get or source for funds. Now, when they do land banking over time, at that particular stage of their life or business where they need more refinancing, they can capitalize on their banked land, okay, to get loan facilities. So you don't want a situation whereby at that point where you need refinance or where you need support finance from financial institutions, you don't even have the land or the assets to meet up with the kind of finance that you need. But if you are banked on land at a point where you need that refinancing, you have the assets that can meet up with your future financial needs. Doesn't this sound interesting? So if it does, you definitely need to consider land banking investment like right now. So another thing to consider for wealth creation opportunity in the land banking space is JV. Yes, JV is the trend now. Now, how is JV helping? For some persons, especially those in developed areas, I've seen investors who do their own land banking in city areas. They go to places where there's already development, so they are sure of their money, they are sure of appreciation, they are sure of the value because this land is well situated. So let's say somewhere around Lekki where you have land for 200 million, you're buying that land, 2 plots of that for about 400 million, with plans that in the next 5 years you will enter a JV that will be worth billions of naira with that land. Yes, that can happen. You can also do that too in emerging areas. You can buy your land and secure your land for the intention of JV, joint ventures. Now, how will joint ventures make you money? Now, when you buy land in strategic locations, when the need arises, when the demand becomes very high that people cannot even buy, or when the price of land in those areas become very expensive, okay, now developers will consider joint venture where they can enter an agreement with the landowner to build and develop on the land and split the profit. Now, that is what a lot of wealthy people in the real estate space here in Lagos are into. They have land in strategic locations and they are open to joint venture. So let's say you have land somewhere in Ikoyi, what with a land size of over 2,400 square meter that you had acquired about 10 years ago for land banking, and at today's market value, let's say 10 years ago you bought that property 2,400 square meter for about 300 million or 400 million, and in today's market it is worth 2 billion naira, right? Now, let's say a developer approaches you and then the developer does not have the finance to buy the land and enter the development, but they have the money to develop. Do you know you can enter an agreement with the developer that the developer can build on the land and then you can split the project? Okay, so joint ventures has a way of creating enormous wealth for those who understand how to leverage on land banking for it. Now, a lot of JV deals can end up giving you more money in the ratio of over 200% more than what you will get if you sell the land. So a lot of people who understand this are going into or taking advantage of that opportunity. So you could buy land in strategic locations, emerging areas, underdeveloped areas, developed areas, with the intention to go into joint venture where there's a chance for you to make even more money that you'll get when you put the land for sale. So a lot of people who have land secured as land banking in all of these developed areas, all of these developed city areas, are turning into the opportunity for joint venture, to create that financial growth for themselves. Okay, so another thing to consider too is the opportunity to lease, whether long lease or short lease, right? Now the good thing is when you lease a property, it's like you're putting it on rent, you're selling it, you're eating your cake and you're having your cake. So do you know if you have land, if you bank in strategic locations, when there's demand, you can lease this property, okay? Even when you start the land banking. So let's say you're buying land for land banking somewhere in Ekpe or somewhere in Abeokuta, somewhere in Ibadan, you can actually lease that for farming, okay, for the time being. After securing and taking possession, you can lease it for industrial work now for 10 years, 5, 10 years, 15 years, and at that point you can reclaim your land and put it to a better use. Okay, so the opportunities to make money when you have land for land banking, you can put it to outright use and you're making cash flow in preparation for your future plans. Okay, does this sound interesting? If it does, make sure that you're considering land banking like right now. Now, another reason why people do land banking is for legacy. There are names that we cannot forget in the real estate space in Nigeria because these names took advantage of land banking from the start point, okay? From the point where people did not realize the potential in the market, they were able to accumulate land for themselves. Yes, you can always think back and you'll find out that there were people around you that were busy buying land, and today their land is worth so much. In fact, some persons are always, most of the people that I've met, are in regret that they would have gotten more, okay? Especially the Lekki boom, when we had Lekki land where people were coming down the Lekki Peninsula to buy land and all of that. When they go to a particular space and they see water, they see swamp, some persons are discouraged. But today, a lot of people are regretting why they did not take the advantage at that time to secure themselves more land. Like I've mentioned in this podcast, it is important to consider bulk purchase for land banking. Okay, so watch out next for the next point to consider why considering land banking and how land banking is the real goal in the real estate investment space. Yes, I've talked about land banking. I've talked about how you can create wealth from land banking. I've talked about where and how you can carry out land banking. Now it's about how you can play safe. Okay, if you must do land banking, you have to do that with your head. You need to play safe. You want a situation where you buy land and then it is safe and good for you, considering it is for long-term investment, considering it is for for your strategic investment planning. So you need to play safe while considering land banking. Now, one of the things I need you to consider here is due diligence. You cannot do without due diligence before you buy that land. But first off, you need to find the land, right? Yes. So in the course of finding the land, in the course of taking the boxes, the key performance indices and all of that, it is important that you have your property lawyer to do the checks, to check for the legitimacy of the vendor or the owner. Okay, so due diligence is very important. And for you to conduct due diligence, you need a team of a consultant, you need a surveyor, you need a property lawyer to chart that property for you to be sure that there's legitimacy from the vendor, okay, and that the person has the right to transfer the title, the assets, and liability to you. Okay, so due diligence, number one. Now, another thing for you to put into consideration in order to play safe is immediate possession. As soon as you're done with your payment, take possession immediately. One of the ways to show that you have taken possession is by clearing. Okay, take a bulldozer to that site, clear certain perimeter areas, and start your perimeter fencing. Don't say, "Oh, Solomon, I bought land, 50 plots of land somewhere in Abeokuta, and it's just bare." No, it is not advisable. If you have 50 plots of land, please start your fencing. Even if you're not going to do it once, start from somewhere. You can do the front area, you can do the back area, you could use wire fence, just use something to secure your perimeter. Now, when you secure your perimeter, you are showing the vendors, you are showing the family, the owners, or the previous owners that you are in charge. You are taking charge, and if there's any dispute, you will discover that at that point. And once you're done with your perimeter, it is also a caveat, it is also a point of order for trespassers. Okay, so you cannot say, "Oh, you're doing land banking and you're not considering taking possession." If you're buying two plots, please take possession. Now, one of the things that people do or investors do now is to partner with real estate developers. Okay, so most of the estates you see by developers is also another way of saying, "Oh, this is a safe haven." That is the idea of buying land in estates. You're buying land in estates because you believe that the company is a registered institution, a legal institution, and they will protect your interests. Okay, for example, what we've been able to do in my project or my company Landers is to secure projects for investors who are considering land banking. Yes, so we create opportunity for land banking, we create land banking opportunities for investors to key in locations where we have interest or where we have interest level, high interest level. So you can partner with consultants, you can partner with real estate developers, okay, to buy land and secure it in certain areas of interest. Now, you can also do this on your own if you have the time, if you have the means, if you have the access, if you have the resources, you can do this on your own. But where you don't have the time, where you don't have the means or the technical know-how, please, you need to partner with the experts in the industry. Talk to a developer about your plans for land banking, and then or talk to your consultant, talk to anybody who is an expert that you trust will give you a good service and access to a good deal, a secure deal, a good deal, a deal that will give you, that peace of mind. Yes. So it's important that you conduct due diligence. It is important that you take possession as soon as possible. It is also important that you do what we call title and documentation. So as soon as you have taken possession, the next thing is to plan for your title. So you've gotten yourself 20 acres of land. The next thing is to do the title. I've had investors we've been in conversation and they have done this same thing. They bought 10 acres, 20 acres, and all of that. They did the same thing. They went through the same process. They went through perimeter fencing, and then some of them have done their paperwork to show that okay, they are the owners of this land. So that is how you play it safe. Now, other things you can do for yourself is to do what? Is to make sure that you put up certain developments, okay, on site to keep trespassers away. So once in a while, go to site, inspect your site, do some clearing here and there, build a observation post, or just carry out something. Now, another thing you can also do is to lease the land or a portion of the land out for probably farming or for certain use. Now, if you notice in city areas, what some people do with their land is that they lease it out to persons who can do shanties, for rentals, or persons who can just do rental apartments that are not permanent structures. Now, the whole idea is to provide safety to the land, especially when it is over time, when it is for a long period of time. It is also important that you consider a trust institution where persons are in charge of the assets. You have a portfolio manager, or you have a property firm that is in charge of your documentation and your land banking title. So in that way, in your presence or absence, you have legal backing, you have people who are administrators of your assets, right? Yeah, it is also important that with what you have been able to do, that certain persons who are stakeholders are aware of what you have done as land banking. Okay, so with these steps, you can play safe. I repeat again: conduct due diligence. Okay, take possession of your property as soon as you're done with the payment. Okay, do your perimeter fencing, perfect your title, make sure the title is in your name, you have your survey in your name, you have your C of O or whatever documentation you need in your name, you have your deed of assignment, you have your receipts, your invoice, and all of that in your name. You can decide to lease, you can decide to employ security, you can also decide to have these assets in trust under a company or a legal firm that has the administrative ability or instruction to manage your assets. Right now, there are lots of asset managers out there, portfolio managers, real estate developers that can help you do this. So doing land banking, it is also important. As much as you consider the winning, the gains, it is important to play it safe. Now, in conclusion, land banking can be very easy if you pay attention to the pros and cons as I've outlined here. Now, if you still have further questions, you're free to ask. Yes, there are lots of experts out there that can also help you put you through in the process of land banking. Now, however, I want to leave on this note that there are lots of ideas around land banking. Now, we've seen the idea of buyback, which is a good deal. Now, buyback process is used by developers, to show investors that truly there's a potential in land banking, where you can buy land from a particular project today, and maybe in 6 months, 12 months time, you get paid, the value of your land when you purchased it with an interest of over 35 to 40%. Now, that's also a new trend. However, I like the traditional land banking, and that is my first choice. Okay, so if you must do land banking, consider the traditional land banking, unless otherwise. So for the traditional land banking, it's all about patience. It's the patience game, the game of waiting. You need to have the appetite to wait. You need that appetite of patience to wait and watch your investment grow. Okay, now it may be slow for the first few years, okay, but upward, a lot of things can happen. Certain government interests in that location, infrastructural plans for that location. It could be a university, it could be an industry, it could be a free trade zone, it could be an airport, it could be a deep sea port, depending on the general master plan. Okay, so land banking can be very easy. Land banking can be done right if you work with a professional, if you ask the right questions, if you work with the right people, you can get land banking right. Now, like I said, I'll repeat again that it is a game of patience. If you follow the pros and the cons, you will be just fine. You will do just fine. Land banking is for everybody. Land banking is not just for the rich and wealthy. Land banking is for anyone who has cash flow. And that is why it is recommended that you go to a place where the price for the land or the asset is affordable. Now, I know a lot of you will have questions like, should I buy in my village? Now, it depends on the village. Okay, I know some persons who are out of the country probably are not aware of what's going on in their village right now. There are some people whose villages have been turned to mini cities, and their cities are growing because of certain interests, certain development, universities, private universities, church programs, and pilgrimage centers, and all of that. So we have seen all of these trends boost the real estate market. Like I said, the real estate boom is not just in Lagos, it is happening almost everywhere in Nigeria. You just have to pay attention. You just have to look at the performance indices. You have to look out for, the potential in a particular area. It could just be you who will be changing the narrative of real estate in where you're buying that land. So let's say you have plans to have a big farm, a big ranch. Let's say you have plans to have a production factory and you're buying over 1,000 plots in a remote location that still has access to infrastructure like road, like electricity and all of that. And when you start up your factory, you start employing people and employing labor. That could also be an activation point for the real estate in that place. So we've seen people build new cities by setting up, massive projects like industries, like companies, like pilgrimage centers. Okay, so anyone can activate the real estate potential of a place. So if it's not your village, it could be the neighboring village, it could be the neighboring town, it could be your state capital, it could be the economic center of Nigeria, Lagos, it could be the political headquarters and the capital city of Nigeria. So there are so many potentials in land banking. You just have to follow the pros and the cons. If you listen to the pros and the cons, if you listen to the experts, if you ask the right questions, do your due diligence, you will just be on your way, on the path to creating wealth. Okay? The good thing about wealth creation is that it gives you the opportunity to live to your fullest potential, right? You can start small. It mustn't be, the highest of the highbrows. Okay? You can actually start land banking from developing areas. Follow the pros and the cons, and you'll be good for it. Okay? If you need other advisory, if you need the best of advice, you can talk to an expert, talk to a consultant, talk to a real estate enthusiast. You can talk to me, and I'll be ever available to help you through the process. However, it is about you who wants to get going, who wants to start the process. It is about you who is interested in creating wealth in the real estate space. There are lots of opportunities for you. But you see, land banking is the real deal. Land banking is the golden investment opportunity in the real estate investment space, and you can do it. If you have cash flow, you can do it. If you have a financial system, for investment, you can do it. And you can start small and expand. You can start with one plot here, one plot there, two plots here, 1 acre there, 2 acres here, 3 acres there, and before you know it, you have land position in strategic locations in the new cities, in the future cities. You never can tell. Your land could just be in the most favorite spot where a multinational corporation would just want to have their headquarters, and that will be a big boom for you, right? So I know you like the sound of that. So if you want to have these, start planning, start doing it now. Start it now, okay? Start having those conversations, start having those investment conversations. Now, if you don't have the money to start now, you can start talking to those who have the capacity to do so. And in that conversation, you could just be getting yourself a deal that can help you to start. So I believe that everybody should have land, okay? Because land will help you. Land is an instrument of God's blessings to man. Land is an instrument of God's blessings to man, and you're not left out in that blessing. Land banking is the real deal. I hope you've learned a lot from this conversation. Now, if you have, please like, share, this podcast, share the link, subscribe to my channel, tell people about Solomon Evarist Talk or Real Estate Talk with Solomon Evarist. And you'll be glad that you did. You could just be helping somebody with the right information to improve their wealth or their finances where there's information. Okay? So see you on the next podcast. This is a Real Estate Talk with Solomon Evarist. Thank you and remain blessed.